And now joining us at Duke University on Book TV is Claude Piantadosi. What do you do for a living?
Well, really, I'm a physician, and I work mostly in taking care of patients with respiratory diseases. But I do have a strong interest in research in extreme environments, and of course, space is the ultimate extreme environment.
Where did that interest come from?
Well, it grew out of my time in the submarine force during the Cold War in the Navy, and of course, submarines are controlled environments and are analogs to spacecraft, and I developed an interest in the problems of life support in submarines, and from that, life support in a spacecraft environment.
And in fact, you've written a book about space.
I have.
Mankind Beyond Earth, the History, Science, and Future of Human Space Exploration. Dr. Piantadosi, do you think that our U.S. space program should be revived, renewed?
Well, clearly that was one of the major reasons for writing the book. Yes, I do. I think we're languishing right now. Americans in general don't share the same excitement that for space exploration as they did, say, when I was a boy during the early days of manned space flight. And I think there are a lot of reasons for wanting to continue with a rich exploration program that involves humans as well as, of course, unmanned missions.
What's the difference in your view of manned and unmanned space exploration?
Well, manned space flight is more expensive by about a factor of 10. It's more difficult because you have the human in the environment where you have to protect life from really extreme conditions, no atmosphere, high radiation levels, and of course microgravity. You have to provide everything, air, water, heat. Unmanned missions, of course, have low risk. If you lose a robot, you lose a robot, not people who are highly skilled and highly trained. They can go further. They can explore more hostile places. There's a very important role for robotic missions in space exploration, and we've learned a tremendous amount from them. That said, there's also a role for people working closely with a problem. I liken the Mars rovers to crawling around on a golf course on your hands and knees and then trying to decide what the geology of the Earth is like. So I feel like humans still have an important role in exploration. We also have an important role to play in terms of the discovery of what our capabilities are, what our place in the world is, and what our place in the universe is. And so the more we learn about ourselves in the space environment, the more we know about ourselves in general. So it's an important, I think, part of the human endeavor that I would hate to see be lost.
We have the International Space Station.
Well, we do, and that's a good point. But of course, the cover of the book shows Mars. That's the ultimate goal, I think, at least for the foreseeable future. There's an entire new planet waiting to be explored. We would learn a huge amount about the geology of our solar system, about planetary science from the exploration of Mars. I think that we also learn a lot about ourselves, having to establish a presence on another planet. This is, of course, a 100-year goal, but I think an important one.
What was the Moon-Mars program?
The Moon-Mars program was initiated by President Bush in about 2004 to use the moon as a stepping stone to get to Mars, to build the infrastructure that would allow us to utilize resources off-planet, extraterrestrial resources, if you will, in order to not have to carry so much stuff with us when we explore space. So the program was designed to build in a stepwise fashion on our current knowledge from the station to the moon again, and then ultimately to go to Mars in a period of about 35 years. Now the costs were very high, and I think that it was an ambitious program, and it didn't garner a lot of enthusiasm, I think, because people didn't understand it well. Again, that was another reason for trying to lay out the problems in relatively simple language of what we need to do to really begin to leave low Earth orbit where the station is and actually venture into real space.
Dr. Piantadosi, what are some of the concrete benefits that we've derived from manned space exploration?
Well, I think the most obvious one to everybody would be aviation safety. If you think back to the 1950s and 60s, aviation was still a relatively dangerous endeavor. Today, aviation is incredibly safe, and a lot of the technology, communications, control of these aircraft have been developed by aerospace companies working directly with NASA and through the U.S. space program. So I think that's the most obvious tangible benefit of having invested in space. There are others. There's telemetry, so biomedical telemetry basically grew out of the space program. Prosthetic limbs. There are a whole range of medical inventions, devices that have come as a direct result of having a vibrant space program. We call those spin-offs, and people say, well, they're very expensive. The cost of those spin-offs has not been worth it. But I guess it's a value judgment. It depends how you measure the value that you get for those inventions. For me, airline safety is worth a great deal, and I'm sure for you it is as well, Peter.
What kind of money do we spend annually on the International Space Station, and is there a return on that investment in your view?
Well, we spend a decreasing amount of our gross domestic product on it. It's not like it was in the 60s when we were in the space race, if you will, where we spent up to 4% of GDP. Now we're well below 1% of GDP, and actually that's decreased even further. You know, we have no delivery system for U.S. astronauts right now. We're using the Soyuz, the Russian spacecraft, to send our people to the ISS. So it'll be several years before we have our own space launch system up and flying again.
Is one developing right now?
It is. There is one. The SLS, Space Launch System, is being developed. But my guess it'll be 2018 before that is ready to take people.
Is it a mistake, in your view, to depend on the Russian highway to the ISS?
I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it's not optimum. I think you can probably take a lesson from recent current events with Crimea and the Ukraine. And you know, Russia has its own agenda, of course, and as long as our interests coincide with theirs, things are fine. But when they diverge, then you know, I think we can have issues.
Do you teach here at Duke as well, Doctor?
I do.
What do you teach?
I teach respiratory physiology. I teach a course in extreme environments, in part with my colleagues, and we cover a lot of the topics that are in the book in the extreme environments course. So it ranges every environment from the undersea to the mountaintop to space, to the future of space exploration. So it's a very nice survey course. It's offered both to